For over 19 years, he's patrolled the highways as a state trooper. During that time, he shared his stories of laughter and tragedy with over 6.5 million people. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please listen to and enjoy Lieutenant Pete Collins.
Thank you. Thank you. In deep sincerity, has anyone in this audience ever received a traffic ticket that you deserved? Look at the hands go down. Everywhere I go, somebody says, hey, let me tell you about the only ticket I ever got. I don't want to hear it. I started speaking to get away from highway patrolling, and my wife, Linda, I got away from all of it. If you don't mind, laugh with a group, lady. If you don't mind, if you're going to laugh when I point at you, that makes everything look good on tape, okay? But have you ever been around somebody, I don't care what you know, they already know more about it than you do? Big shots, wheels. I stop them every day. They'll look at me like I'm a mental reject when I stop them. Why didn't you stop that drunk? Why didn't you get these folks breaking the law? I'm just out trying to make a living. I've got a schedule to make. I stopped this guy the other day. Fuzzbusters. Any of you got a fuzzbuster? Don't lie to me. You got a fuzzbuster? Raise your hand. You're going to go to hell on a bobsled. You know that, don't you? You get to heaven, he's going to say, you're a fuzzbuster. Down you go. But listen, that you sit up and you say, it wasn't on, officer. I don't speed. I just want to know where you are. I know where I am, And then you get around. I love it. I love the smoky talk on the CB. I'm sitting on the side of the road and you hear these truck drivers come over the hill. Has anybody seen a northbound Smoky? And I'm sitting there, I hadn't seen a one. Come on. And I'm waiting for him to come, see. And I got the radar on and I got my little button to get him, And you hear him come off the hill. Whom, whom. And I'm saying, come on. And I got my button, and he said, has anybody seen a Smoky? And I'm saying, I hadn't seen a one, come on. And I kick that radar, and he goes, hey, it's too late, folks. That little fuzzbuster will work, but I've already got you. I stopped this guy, he's got a new Cadillac, running 98. I kicked that radar on, he almost drug the front bumper off trying to stop. He jumped out of his car. You've been around them. Big shots. Wheels. He looked at me and he said, hey, boy, do you know who I am? No, sir, but I'm fixing to find out. Let me see your driver's license. I looked at his license and he said, hey, I work for the governor. I said, I do too. He said, you gonna write that ticket? I said, I sure am. He said, I'll have you in the unemployment line, boy. I said, promise? Listen, I'm writing the ticket. You know what he did? He snatched it out of my hand. He said, you got the time, I got the money. I said, oh, I got the time. He slung gravel all over me leaving, but I didn't get mad because I'm a Baptist. And Baptists don't get mad. We get even. And I just called the next trooper up the road. I said, he's got a new Cadillac and a fuzzbuster, so stick it to him. Eh? About 5 minutes he called me and he said, Lieutenant, I got him at 84. You know that nut told that trooper the same thing he told me? You got the time, I got the money. Slung gravel all over him leaving, but he didn't get mad because he's a Baptist. He just called the next trooper. And when that trooper met him, he was running 71. But folks, when they met him up at Vaden, he was running 46 miles an hour. Now listen, you get in this business and think you know it all, and that old trooper gets in that pocketbook, he can tear you up. I guess I've heard 1,000 stories about why people are speeding. Got this little girl several weeks ago coming home from State College. She was speeding and I motioned for her to pull over and she saw me in the rearview mirror. She went. Now that makes me mad. I got a Magnum and a badge. I can shoot you. But I've learned, don't ever turn the siren on behind a woman. She stop and bam, you hit her in the butt. You got to move over, see? Am I hitting a nerve here, lady? Have you been there? I mean, listen. And I pull over on the side and I hit the siren and she pulls the car over. And, you know, I got a badge. I pulled that old hat real low. I walked up to her and I said, "Why didn't you stop for me?" She looked up at me and she said, "I got to go to the bathroom." Now, wait a minute, lady, I've been there. I mean, there's no inconvenience in the world like having to try to, listen, you try to walk when you've got, but you try to drive a car when you've got to go to the restroom. And I mean, listen, this little girl was pitiful. I said, "They've got a service station right up the road." She said, "I knew that. That's why I was speeding." But folks, listen. What are you going to do when a highway patrolman gets behind you? You try to stay right on the speed limit. You don't want to mess up. And just as sure as you try not to, that's when it happens. I stopped this guy and I said, "You didn't stop for that stop sign." He said, "I slowed down." I said, "That's not stopping." He said, "There's no difference in slowing down and stopping." I said, "Oh, yes, there is." I took that old black stick we have. And I said, "I'm going to start hitting you over the head fast. And then I'm going to slow down. And then I'm going to stop. And see if you know the difference in slowing down and stopping then." They called me one morning bright and early and they said, "Lieutenant, they're just disobeying that stop sign. And I want you to go down there and work on them." Folks, I wasn't there about 5 minutes. Any of you remember those old Studebakers? Had the long pointed nose, you know. This guy came through a stop sign. He didn't check up. I turned the blue lights on him and he got out and said, "What do you want, boy?" I said, "Mister, you didn't stop at that stop sign." He said, "Let me tell you something." He said, "I've been working down there at that pet milk company for 30 years and I ain't never stopped at that stop sign." I said, "Well, you going to start today?" And I took my pen out and wrote him a ticket. So help me, Hannah. Next morning, bright and early, they called me to this same stop sign. I get there and that old Studebaker is all smashed in the rear. I walked up to him and I said, "What happened?" He said, "Ask him." I looked over at this little innocuous-looking little fellow with horn-rimmed glasses. He looked at me and he said, "Wait a minute, trooper. I know you've heard every story." Now, lady, don't mess this up. I'm fixing to tell you. He said, "I know you've heard every story in the world, but I've been following that old fool for 30 years, and he ain't never stopped that stop." You know, but you've got to understand something about highway patrolling. I love it. Right after I came home, they came up to me and they said, "We want to give you a brand new car, give you a new outfit to wear, you know, give you a credit card to buy gas." Oh, I was so excited about being a state trooper. I wouldn't even take my badge off of my pajamas at night. I just look down at it, you know. It was so exciting. And one night about 3 o'clock, they called me and I'm ready. I jump in that patrol car and they said, "Hey, it's about 10 miles below this little town we were living in." And I kicked that big Ford and about 2 miles, that's where the wreck was. And when I came over the hill, hey folks, at about 130, there the wreck was. And you can imagine how fast you go through a wreck at 130. I'm gone. I go down the road about 2 miles and I turn around and I pull up and this guy ran up to me and he said, "Hey, trooper, did you see that highway patrolman come through here a while ago?" I said, "Yes, sir. They got a bad wreck down the road." What did I do? Just like you do, just like I do. We cover up our mistake. When you run a stop sign, I write you a ticket. When I run a stop sign, I reach down and turn the blue lights and siren on. You think I'm going to a wreck. I mean, that's the way it is. I remember one night we were having a womanless wedding. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with a womanless wedding, it means that a lot of the men in the community will dress up like a woman and they'll go down to a high school gymnasium and they'll have a wedding. And we do that to have a fundraising for someone that either ill or had some financial needs. But I selected a Dolly Parton outfit for the occasion that evening. I remember I had on a beautiful pink flowing chiffon. Now, fellas, can you sort of picture how a pink chiffon dress would come over these hips? And I sort of fixed myself upstairs like one normally would if they wanted to be representative of this precious lady. And I took a beautiful wig and I made myself up, and I started up to this high school gymnasium in a little place called McCool. Now you gotta picture this. I'm in a state highway patrol car dressed up like Dolly Parton, okay? And I'm driving up Highway 12, and I get behind a drunk. I mean, honestly, he's drunk and he's weaving all over the highway. And I say to myself, I got to write this guy a ticket. He's going to kill somebody. And I turn the blue lights on, and he pulls over, and I take my flashlight and I walk up to the car, and I said, let me check your driver's license. And he looked up, and his eyes tried to focus on this Dolly Parton wig. And you got to understand now what he was looking at. And he said, my God, I guess I am drunk. Hey, come on, folks. I said, he looked up and he said, my God, I guess I am drunk. Have you ever been embarrassed? Have you ever been so totally embarrassed that you simply did not know what to do? Now, I don't know about a lot of you, but in the South, we handle funerals a little differently than in most places. We have not a ritual, but little things. And a friend of mine, when I came on the highway patrol, he was the man they called breaking you in. He would ride with you and sort of point out some of the do's and don'ts. And I remember he used to love to sing gospel music. And he'd sit over there and he'd sing, you know, when we all get to heaven. And I'd sit there and enjoy his singing, and we just enjoyed each other's company. Well, one afternoon, after they'd moved me away from there, the phone rang, and Miss Minnie was on the other line, Mr. Garland's wife, and she said, Pete, you know, Mr. Garland passed away today. And I said, Miss Minnie, I'm awful sorry. She said, you know, Pete said he was talking about you yesterday in the hospital. And he said, honey, if this is my time to go, I want you to promise me that you'll get Pete Collins to sing at my funeral. Now, folks, if you've ever heard me sing, you'll know that that would be a laugh within itself. However, I said, yes, ma'am, I'll do anything I can to help you. She said, could you come down? I said, yes, ma'am. Now, folks, see, they live just at the other end of the state, and I got in the patrol car, and I drove all the way down and pulled up a little small, modest, white-framed house. Got out of the car, and they met me at the front door, and I embraced her, and I said, Miss Minnie, I'm awful sorry. She said, Pete, let me introduce you, and her son and daughters. She said, you know, he wanted you to sing a little differently. Said, you know, our church, we don't believe in music in the church, and said, but we want you to sing a cappella out in the cemetery just as they begin to lower his body into the grave. He wants you to sing all 3 verses of his favorite song. I said, well, yes, ma'am, I'll do the best I can. What did he want me to sing? Well, she started to think, and she started to try to remember, and her son would suggest something, her daughter, and she said, no, don't get me mixed up. Now, folks, I'm telling you truth, so help me. She looked at me, and she said, Pete, he wanted you to sing all 3 verses of Jingle Bells. Don't laugh, folks, I like to die. I said, ma'am. She said, no, Pete, I'm honest. He said that was his favorite song. All 3, lady, don't laugh at me. You ought to have been there. I said, ma'am, I can't sing Jingle Bells. It's August. It's 106 degrees. He's a highway patrolman. The commissioner of public safety will be there. The governor will be. I can't. Oh, no, don't, lady. Please don't. She said that's what he wanted to hear. I walked back out to the car. I said, you know, when all else fails, call your wife. She'll help you. I called her and I explained the situation, and like most of you ladies, you're so kind and considerate. She said, wow, that's just fine, Mr. Big Shot. You went down there and took over. Now you made your bed, get in it. I said, Mama, I can't sing at that man's funeral. It's August. It's 106 degrees. I can't sing Jingle Bells. And besides, have you ever tried to find 3 verses of Jingle Bells? I mean, there's not but one verse. She said, honey, the governor won't go to the cemetery. The commissioner won't go to the cemetery. All the wheels will come and make a big show at the funeral home. And then they fly back to the Capitol. They know. I said, you're right. Well, I've tried to get my mind set, and folks, I'm telling you, in fact, didn't a soul go home. Everybody went to the cemetery. Just as far as you could see, highway patrolmen from all over America, the governor, the commissioner, everybody standing there. And my cue was when the preacher said, amen. Oh, I wanted to die. I'm standing there, and the preacher, he reads the scripture, and he said, let not your hearts be troubled. If you believe in God, believe also in me. And my mind is saying, if you are a God, you wouldn't have put me in this position. And then he said, amen, and I'm on. Dashing through the snow in a one-horse open. Don't laugh, lady, I'm serious. Perspiration was rolling. Everybody out there was going. And I'm going, over the fields we go, laughing all the way. And when it was over, everybody made a mad dash to the car to laugh. I wanted to die. Finally, Miss Minnie walked up to me, mascara running down her face. She'd been crying, and she said, son, that was beautiful. I said, ma'am. She said, I owe you an apology. I said, ma'am. She said, I was so upset yesterday. I wanted to knock in that hole with a husband. I said, ma'am. She said, Garland's favorite song was When They Ring Those Golden Bells. But you see, there's so many things. You like that, didn't you, sir? I mean, you've sat there for 2 hours and you hadn't moved, but you like that, didn't you, huh? But I promise you, being a highway patrolman is the grandest thing in the world to me. I really believe with all of my heart, if they came up today and said, hey, Pete, we can't pay you anymore, I'd work for nothing. I love it. I can't wait to get up in the morning and put this uniform on and go to work. Not to write you tickets. Not the heartache and the tragedy of life. But I just like to see you. I like to see you when you look at me in that patrol car and you wave, hey, trooper. When I'm in my old pickup, you'll. But it's this uniform. It makes me somebody. I got a pistol, But folks, this doesn't make me a man. I got a badge, but this doesn't make me a man. What makes me what I am and what makes you what you are is really what's down deep inside. I was patrolling out on the highway one afternoon, and I got up behind this little boy. Will never forget him. I guess I'd been on the highway patrol about 2 weeks. He had one of these little mopeds. He didn't have a tag on it. He wasn't wearing a helmet. And I said he looked to be about 13 or 14 years old. I'm the law. I got a badge and a gun. Shall never forget, I turned the blue lights on him and he pulled his little moped over. I walked up to him and I said, son, let me see your driver's license. Why, he was trembling all over. He's scared to death. He said, mister, I don't have any driver's license. I said, you're not old enough, are you? No, sir. I said, what are you doing out on my highway, son? My highway. What are you doing out on my highway without driver's license? I was going to the store. I said, where's your tag? Don't have one. I said, you don't have a helmet on? No, sir. I said, I'm going to write you a ticket. Yes, sir. I wrote him a ticket. No driver's license, no helmet, no inspection sticker, no tag. Each charge, well, they would have added up to over $100. I'm the law. I tore the ticket out and I gave it to him. I said, don't get back out on the highway, son, without driver's license. Yes, sir. He said, can I go to the store? I said, not on that moped. Yes, sir. I walked back to the car. I had a .357 Magnum, folks. I was the law. Well, I put my hand up one day and I said, I swear to uphold the Constitution of the laws of this state without regard to race, creed, or color. And I looked back at him. He was pushing in the hot sun this moped down the highway. And I realized, what is the law? I said, son, wait a minute. Yes, sir. Why are you going to the store? Oh, Grandmama sent me this list. I found out, folks, that his mother and dad had left him and he was living with his grandmother. And she was old, couldn't get out. Only way they had to go get groceries. But I'm the law. I said, come here, baby. Give me a ticket. I picked his moped up and I stuck it in the trunk and I let him ride on the front with me and he put my patrol cap on. I learned a lot the very first week of my life as a state trooper. I learned, ladies and gentlemen, that you need to enforce the law with understanding, with compassion. Yeah, I had the authority. I could write him a ticket. But what would I have done to his life? Well, his poor grandmother, she'd had to pay for that out of a Social Security check. What I try to do, fellas, ladies, is I do my job. I try to be fair and honest. Everywhere I go, folks will say, Pete, what could we do to try to make our highways safer and our world a better place to live? Well, the two things that pop into my mind that, ladies and gentlemen, everyone in this great auditorium could tell. Let's get the drunks off the road and let's wear our seatbelt. Wear your seatbelt, folks. Oh, I believe in mine. I tell you, I put my seatbelt on every time I get in an automobile. Why? Because I've never unbuckled a dead person and I believe in them. You know, you can sell something when you believe in it. My wife has an unusual occupation, folks. My wife is a funeral director. I couldn't get her to wear a seat belt under any circumstances. Why? Well, honey, it messes up my blouse. It wrinkles up my dress. I'm just going to the grocery store. Did you know, folks, that the majority of fatalities in this great land in which we live within 25 miles of your home? One night we were in bed and the phone rang. Why, anytime the phone rings late at night, it's a wreck for Pete, But it wasn't for me, it was for my wife. It was the funeral home telling her that in our neighboring county, a drunk came across the center line and hit a man and his wife and two little girls. The man and his wife and one of the little girls, they were killed instantly, and they had called my wife to the funeral home. She got up and I sat there on the side of the bed and I said, I wonder why. Were they wearing seat belts? What? I didn't understand all of it at that time. And I said, baby, I'll just go with you. We got up to the funeral home, and as I walked in, I was sitting at the table doing some things, and I heard a movement, and I walked into where these people that had just been involved in this accident was lying. And I heard something peck, peck. And I walked over to my wife as she was standing by that steel table. And she was taking her left hand and pushing back through the curly hair of this little child, lying beside her mother, and my wife's teardrops hitting on that steel table. And she looked at me and she said, you won't ever have to worry about me wearing a seatbelt anymore. You see, this little child was sitting up on the seat, had her hands propped just like this. When that impact, you see there's two impacts always in a crash. One when you or that vehicle that you're riding in hits something, and then when you go forward at the same speed that that vehicle's traveling in, and you hit the dashboard, the windshield, everything that's in that automobile that's not belted in, from babies to groceries, is going to go straight forward. Hey folks, no amount of love in the whole world can keep you, when you reach over to try to touch that little child and hold it in a spot, to keep it from going through the windshield. Oh, when Jeff Collins, while he was coming up, we didn't have seat belts and we didn't have car seats. Folks, you want to get me in a wad as a state trooper? Let me see you riding down the highway with your little child standing up on the seat beside his daddy. I know you love him, you're proud of him, but folks, if you love him, buckle him up. Let him have a chance to live in life. Second thing I'd like to remind you, let's get all the drunks off the road. Listen, we know that over 56% of the people on the highways killed by a drunk. If we wanted to just stop 56% of the folks from being killed, let's get the drunks off the road. When I came out as a state trooper, I was going to do that. But every night I'd go to bed, there's just that many drunks out there. I left church one Sunday afternoon, started up Highway 35. I came up behind a Dodge pickup. It was running all over the road. I turned the blue lights on and he pulled out and pulled over, and he got out and he walked back to me and he took his driver's license out and he handed them to me. I said, "Sir, you've had too much to drink and I'm going to take you down to the jail and I'm going to run a test on you." I shall never forget, ladies and gentlemen, he put his hands in his back pocket and he looked down. He looked up at me and he said, "Trooper, you know I'm drunk. I know I shouldn't have been out here on the highway. I'm sorry." He said, "But I hadn't had a job all winter. My daughter's in the hospital right down here. We don't have any money. I got a brand new job over in the Delta." He said, "If you lock me up, I'm going to lose that job. You know I'm drunk, so I'll lose my driver's license." He said, "Trooper, I gave my wife the last nickel I had to buy groceries." He said, "Don't lock me up." He said, "If you lock me up, it's going to cost me money that we hadn't got." He said, "I'll sleep right over here on the highway. I promise I won't move till in the morning. Please don't lock me up." I took an oath one day to try to enforce the law. By law, I'm supposed to lock him up. But if I lock him up, I'm going to cost him money. And he's going to lose his driver's license. And how in the world, gang, can he make a living without his driver's license? I said, "Mr. Cook, go to sleep." I took his keys and I put them up on top of the truck. And I drove back and forth for a long time, checking on him, and he was asleep. I went home and went to bed, and before the sun came up, the phone rang. I answered the phone. They said, "Pete, you got a pretty bad wreck. You better go see about it." I don't have to tell you. You've already figured it out. When I pulled up, I saw a green Dodge pickup upside down. I walked up, and there he was. You said, "Trooper, are you telling me if you'd locked him up, he'd been alive today?" I know if I'd have locked him up, that he wouldn't have been killed that morning. You see, ladies and gentlemen, we got to be sincere and honest, but you got to be firm about drinking and driving. Ladies and gentlemen, alcohol is America's #1 drug problem. And I wonder if we've all gone crazy. My very first week, I found out really real. I'm sitting on the side of a highway and a lady flags me down and she says, "Trooper, there's a little baby down there in that trash dumpster." I said, "Ma'am?" She said, "A little baby?" Fellas, I cranked up and I drove down the highway to an old green dumpster were the flies and the bugs swarming. I walked up and, hey, ladies, somebody had had a little baby girl they didn't want. They wrapped it up in a green garbage bag and they chucked it over in the dumpster and let it die. I looked over and I said, have we all gone crazy? When we arrested the mother, crack addict, drugs, alcohol. Ladies and gentlemen, in America, we've got a drug problem. But our biggest problem is alcohol. Why can't we do something about it? I got a suggestion. Let's see if it won't work. Let's see if we don't start. See if we can't start here and decide which generation we want to save. And let's start training them young about what alcohol will do for you. Alcohol has caused many a little old boy and girl to go to school without love and affection. But alcohol has done one thing for me that I won't ever get over. Alcohol has put enough scars in my life. And I don't like drunks. There are things that I wished I could tell you. But I don't want anybody to know. I've never had a drink of alcohol in my life. Not because I'm too good or I'm a saint. It's just because I was raised in it all my life. And I don't want to be around drinking. I used to pray that when I got grown, I was going to get in a place where I didn't have to ever be around drunks. And I declare if I didn't get in a job where I deal with them every day. But I know this, if I don't know anything else about what I do. I know that I'm where God wants me to be. I mean, I'm here. And I know that the highway is my life. And if there's anything I could do different, if I had one chance to do life over, I'd be a state trooper all over again.